I used to make Swahili donuts to sell. Putting Junior on my back while I worked was exhausting. The profit from selling donuts was very small, so sometimes we had to sleep hungry. When Junior saw me worrying, he would say, "Don't worry, Mama. We'll just drink tea and eat donuts tonight. And tomorrow you'll sell more, and then we can eat." I was so happy. I told God, "You really know us, don't you?" Even the other mothers in the community were saying, "We are so happy when the kids come home from school. They've already eaten." The Women's Empowerment Program taught me how to run a business. I learned about savings, budgeting, and how to take care of my family. The program really blessed me, and it helped me get where I am now. When I opened my shop for the first time, I still wasn't totally confident in myself, but I kept doing business. I gained courage, and I was like, okay, I can do this. I thank God because now we can cook proper meals at home. After being empowered by Convoy of Hope, I had more available money, and now whatever Junior's needs are, I can take care of them. When I think about the hardships I've been through, I don't want to see anyone else cry about their life. So because the way Convoy empowered me, I was able to help another woman in need. If we keep doing that, I hope that we are able to reach a lot of women. Through Convoy of Hope, women can see themselves as capable of good work. Junior and I had given up hope, but Convoy restored it and showed me that I am capable.
Man, I love that story because not only does Convoy help feed people, but you heard her say, because she had more money and more time, she was able to help another lady start her business and start her own thing. And you got to think about it this way, all because of our generosity in one day's wage, whatever you make in a day, whatever you can give. Maybe you can't give one day's wage. Find something to give, because what it does is, as these women and men, because there's also farmers that do the same thing, just think about how when Convoy takes 10 people and shows them how to farm, shows them how to start a business, and those 10 people go show 10 people, and then those 10 people show 10 more people, it will change the way a nation thinks. They live in poverty right now because of their mindset, but because of what we're doing, partnering with Convoy, it can literally change the way a nation thinks, to take them out of poverty, helping them be able to survive by themselves and not want a handout every time you turn around. It's amazing what Convoy does, and I just want you to understand that when we give, when we partner with them, which we're going to do in the next week or so, and when we give that one day, I just want you to know what that money is going to and the change that will take place in people's lives today. One day can transform their everyday. That's their slogan, and I love that slogan. Today, though, I'm actually talking about stand. We're in our third week. If this is your first time here, welcome to Roots Church, and we'll welcome those that are watching online. Can we let them know that we know they're there today? If you're watching online, if it is your first time joining us, just click on the link. Let us know that it's your first time. We have something we would like to reach out to you. And then also, if you have a prayer request, please let us know. We'd love to pray for you as well. This is our third week in Stand. In the first week, we talked about standing out, which means being different. We learned that Daniel stood out. He would not defile himself by eating off the king's table. And so instead of making a big deal out of it, he actually brought a solution to the table. There's going to be times in our lives that we're going to be pressured into making a decision. And this is why it's important for us to pre-decide what we're going to do before that even comes before us, because it makes it a lot easier. If you just know that I'm not going to do such and such, when it happens, it's easier to make that decision than wait until you're in the moment. So it's important to pre-decide how we're going to live our lives. Week 2, we talked about standing up for what is right and true. We knew that King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream and he wanted to interpret it. And some of the people that could interpret the dream wouldn't interpret the dream because they were afraid of what the king's response would be of what the dream was saying. But Daniel was able to stand up towards the king and say, listen, here's what the dream means. It means you're pretty much going to live in isolation for 7 years and everything you have is going to be gone until you get on your knees and recognize that he is the one true God, and then he'll restore your kingdom. He said, you're a great leader. God's prospering you. So he says, please take my advice. Stop sinning and allow God to use you. But as you know, last week, the king did not do that. He let his pride get in the way. There are going to be times where we are going to be able to stand up for what is right. We just have to do it the right way. We got to do it lovingly. Not being rude, but lovingly help them. Why? Because we want to restore the relationship with God. Today, I'm actually talking about standing strong. We'll look at one of the most popular stories in Daniel today, Daniel and the lion's den. How many have ever heard of that story before? All right, many of you have heard of Daniel and the lion's den. And we're going to talk about how we can stand strong in the times of adversity, in the times of when our faith gets challenged. It's so important for us to be able to stand strong. I'm going to help you in that area. Now, when I think of Daniel in the lion's den, this story has been taught for many, many years. And as a matter of fact, when I was in children's church or Sunday school, how many of you attended Sunday school? This was church before church. All right, you came to church early, you went to Sunday school. Here at this church, the bell would ring when Sunday school was over. Literally, a bell would ring, everybody would dismiss from class, and then come in here and then get a word from the pastor. That's how long ago we did a Sunday school or even in our kids' church. Now, when I was in Sunday school, when I learned about Daniel and the lions, okay, they took these cute little kittens and they put them on a thing called a flannel graph. Anybody remember those? It's a felt board where you peel the nice little cute kitten off and you stick it on the felt board and you let them know, here's Daniel, here's the 3 kitties, and these kitties didn't get to eat Daniel because God protected him and all that good stuff. It was a cool thing, but I need you to understand something. These were not cute little kittens. They were ferocious, mean lions that would devour you in a heartbeat. If you've ever been hunting or know someone that's been hunting, I have actually been hunting and I saw a bobcat one time. Anybody see a bobcat while you're hunting? Maybe you went hunting north and you saw a mountain lion. It's pretty freaky, you know what I'm saying? And so these things are not the nicest things in the world. As a matter of fact, when Pastor Charles went to Kenya years ago, he would talk about how these lions would roar at night and the ground would shake. He said it was just like, it gives you goosebumps. Because he obviously, when we think of a lion, we think of the Lion of Judah, But that is how crazy these cats are. These are mean cats. So I'm going to read to you in Daniel 6. It says, Darius was the king at the time. You need to know that Daniel went through 3 kings when he was there. And the second king was King Darius. Daniel at this time was 80 years old. Week 1, he was about 14 years old when I talked about him. Week 2, he was 44 years old. And week 3, he's 80 years old. Aren't you glad you don't progress that fast in age? So we're really progressing through Daniel's life. But he was about 80 years old. And here's what it says. Darius was this genius administrator. He was brilliant at organization. And it says in Daniel 6, verse 1, it pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom. A satrap is basically a leader with 3 administrators over them, one whom was Daniel. So you've got 120 leaders, and they were going to appoint 3 administrators over the leaders. And does that sound familiar to anybody? It sounds like organization. It sounds like your work structure. You have a VP, then you have a manager, department managers, and so forth and so on in the workers. It's the same thing in church. You have organizations in churches that actually have all these different leaders. This is straight out of the Bible. Organization is absolutely important to have control and to have order. And it says that these satraps were made accountable to them so that the king might not suffer loss. So the reason why you have the satraps and you have the administrators administrators is so the king wouldn't suffer loss in his kingdom, or why you do it in a business is so the business wouldn't lose money or people, whatever business it is. It helped organize because only one person can do so much. So you start appointing leaders in place to help organize and run the business, to grow the business or to grow the organization. And it says, now Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over, that the king set to plan him over the whole kingdom. This is a leadership lesson right here. We actually talk about this in Growth Track. We talk about Daniel and his leadership qualities. We talk about how it's so important to go above and beyond the call of what our gifting is, that we just don't wait around for somebody to tell us what to do. We just actually go do it. This was Daniel. It says he distinguished himself. In other words, he put himself out there and would do a great job. You know that if you work for certain business, I've heard this about certain businesses, I will not name them, but there are certain businesses, some are still here, some are not, that men or women would work exceptionally hard at their job. What they would do is they would just do the work and a little bit more. And because they were actually showing other people that they were doing a great job, their boss, whoever it is, their coworkers didn't like it. And they went around and said, you're working too hard. You need to stop working. And you're thinking to myself, I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. This is what people do. Daniel was one of those people. He literally went above and beyond. He distinguished himself in front of the king. And when he did that, guess what? The king put him over all the kingdom. This is how God works. When you do what is right and you go above and beyond, God will elevate you. It's not man that gives you the promotion, by the way. God uses the man to give you the promotion, but it's God who elevates in the end. And so now, when you think about Daniel distinguishing himself, going above and beyond, and then Darius is saying, I'm going to make you ruler over all this, you would think that that's a promotion, right? It's a good thing to kind of climb the ladder. I would say yes, but at the same time, as you become at that level, guess what happens? Opposition takes place. People start questioning every move you make. And this is why, if you're a people pleaser, you most likely won't make it in leadership. Because leaders have to make very hard decisions in their organization or in their business that some people may not agree with or like, but they can't worry about that. They got to make their decision, and they got to be led, in our case, by God to make those decisions. And sometimes when you make those decisions, people don't like it. And they buck the system. They bring opposition. So this is what happens. I'm going to give you 3 truths to help you stand strong today. So if you're taking notes, they'll all be on the screen. Take pictures, write them down, whatever you want to do. But I think it's going to take us to stand strong in our faith, in our walk with God, in order to get through these things. As a matter of fact, I think it's actually going to take a supernatural strength that only we can get from God by developing a close relationship with Him in our faith. Knowing that when we stand strong in what we believe, that no matter what the outcome is or the consequence, that God will pull through for us. There's moments that you and I are all going to be challenged to stand strong. So here's what you need to know. Number one, that when God raises you up, you have to expect people to tear you down. You just got to know that when God begins to elevate you, you start to do some really good things. You start to prosper. You start to, maybe you're making more money. Maybe you're able to buy more things. Maybe you're working your way up in leadership. Maybe you started your business and it's successful. There's going to be people that are going to try to tear you down. They do not want you to be successful. As a matter of fact, you get a promotion. People get jealous. They'll go around you. They'll tell your boss, other people, of how bad of a job you do. They will do anything to kind of rip you apart. Maybe you're a stay-at-home mom. Maybe you have gotten to the place financially that you say, you know what, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. And then you will have your friends criticize you, say things to you because they're jealous of you that they can't stay at home because maybe they got themselves in a financial situation that they can't get out of. And now they both have to work to a place. Now, I'm not talking about ladies, if you work a job to make ends meet. I'm talking about ones that maybe don't have to, or the ones that decide not to, and then we get jealous of them and we criticize stay-at-home moms. Well, you don't know what it's like to work in the real world. These kinds of statements. It's going to happen. Maybe you get excited about your faith. and you start to serve and you start to go to church, and your language starts to change. And all of a sudden people start making fun of you and start saying, oh, look at you now, you're a Bible thumper, and oh, you're this, and oh, you got God in your life. And people will start to tear you down when you start to stand strong in your faith. Maybe you get out of debt, but people tear you down and not celebrate with you. I can tell you from a personal standpoint of getting out of debt and staying out of debt is the fact that you get to do what you want to do because you are not financially bound by whatever loan you have. And what happens is when you're financially free, you get to do what you want, you get to go where you want, and you get to buy what you want with cash, and people don't like it. So what are they going to do? Tear you down. Oh, look at him over there. Look at him doing this, and look at that. It happens to me in my life, and I know it happens to you in your life. But because we're making good decisions financially, we get ripped about it. You know what this is called in New Zealand? It's called the tall poppy syndrome. In New Zealand, in Australia, when they think somebody's bragging about their life, when somebody is getting elevated, when somebody's getting promoted, they literally will do everything they can to ruin that person. That's literally a thing over in New Zealand. It's not to criticize you in constructive criticism to help you get to the next level. No, they're jealous of you and they don't want you to succeed. As a matter of fact, when you're in any kind of government or high organization as you're trying to climb the ladder, they will literally try to keep you from getting to that next level. Here in the States, our metaphor is crab in a bucket. Have you ever heard of that? I mean, you guys are going to learn something today. Crab in a bucket. If you learn anything, crab in a bucket's what you're going to take home today. The crab in the bucket metaphor is if I can't have it, neither can you. If you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket and one crab starts to climb out of the bucket, he's almost home free. Another crab will reach up and pull him back down in the bucket. So no matter what, that crab will never get out of the bucket because the mentality is, if you can't do it, or if I can't do it, you can't do it. There are people in your life that will be like that for you. Dream busters is part of that. And so we have to be careful to know that, listen, it's going to happen. When God starts to raise you up, you can just get ready for the opposition of people tearing you down. You can be ready for people to shred you on Facebook. And you know what? You just be okay with that. Because you know that that is actually going to come. So you just know that when God raises you up, expect people to tear you down. When God blesses you, they'll still try to tear you down. Verse 4 says, at this, the administrators and the satraps try to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. It says they could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. How cool would that be if you had that type of reputation? That they tried to find fault in you, but they couldn't find nothing because you were an upright standing person. You were a man of trusty. You were trusting. You had integrity and character. This is where I get my example of why I think character is so important. That when you do start to get raised up, when God begins to prosper you and elevate you, that if your character is on good standing, people cannot find no fault in you. They can't find anything wrong, and so they got to come up with something, and so that's what happens. These two men were jealous, and so they finally said, we'll never find any basis for charging against this man Daniel unless it has something to do with the law of God. So you got these two jealous administrators of Daniel because Daniel was just exceptional, doing great things, and they didn't like it. They tried to find something wrong in Daniel. They couldn't find it, so they said, you know what? We're going Hunger Games on this dude. You seen the movie Hunger Games? Okay, they try to take you out. Come on, 10 o'clock, get with me. Come on. Get with me. So what happens is they decide to go to the king and trick the king in coming up with a law that you couldn't pray in public. We think that's going to stop Daniel? We're going to learn something from Daniel today. You know what's interesting about Western Christianity's philosophy? The Western culture, which is where we live, the mindset of if I'm serving God, then nothing should happen to me. That's what a lot of Christians believe. A lot of people believe if I just go to church and I start serving God, then everything's going to be okay because my God's going to take care of me and I shouldn't have opposition. Who believes that? No. I will tell you this. The more you serve God, the more God uses you for His work, the more opposition you're going to get. This is why I'm okay with opposition. I'm okay with people saying things about me personally, and I'm okay with people saying things about our church. It doesn't bother me because I know that we are doing what we're supposed to do, and God is using not only me, but He's using all of you to reach people, to change lives. Do you think for 1 second the enemy wants changing lives? So the more lives you begin to change, the more lives you begin to influence, the enemy is going to try to come in and destroy what you have going on. And he will use people to do it. If you're not ready to face opposition for being obedient to God, then you're not ready to be used by God. Let me say that again for some of you. If you're not ready to face opposition for being obedient to God, then you're not ready to be used by God. If you want God to use you, get ready for opposition. Get ready for people to try to tear you down and discredit everything that you've been doing, especially a new believer that is on fire for God and their life has changed. You know how many times as a pastor that I have heard, they go to your church. Well, do you know their history? I said, I sure do. And they may not be where they want to be, but they're not where they used to be. And I praise God for that. And they're on a new journey. What you got to say about that? People will try to tear you down when your life is changing. I'm not here to help the perfect people. There are no perfect people. And if you're in the room today and you think you're perfect, you probably need to get up and give up your seat for the person that is not perfect. It got quiet in here. If you're watching online, I say the same thing. There's no perfect person. We are here to help people that are messed up. We are here to help people like me who is jacked up. I'm jacked up on a journey. God is helping me through many, many things in my life. He's helping you. And I'm not where I want to be, but I can tell you right now, I am definitely not where I used to be. People will bring opposition to us when we are serving Him, when God begins to move in our life. I'm more concerned when there is no opposition. If you don't have opposition, if you don't have people talking about you a certain way, then I have to believe and think that we're just not making a difference and we're just going along with the crowd. In other words, we're not different. We're not standing up for things that we believe in our faith. We're too afraid. I think there's a lot of people pleasers. And the reason why people pleasers aren't in leadership is because they want to please everybody and they can't make good decisions because they're always trying to please all these people. I can tell you in leadership, if you're in leadership in this room, in your business or in your company or job, wherever you are in any organization, you will find out real quick that you will face a time when you got to make a really hard decision and people will look at you and say, I can't even believe we're doing that. And whether it's right or wrong, guess what? You still got to make the decision. We can't worry about what other people think in that moment. Daniel didn't care. He stood strong in his faith. He's a great example for all of us when it comes to what we believe in and how we should stand. Here's the second one, and that is kneeling to pray is what gives you the strength to stand. You got to kneel and get on your knees to have the strength to stand strong. I love this point because I think many of us, when opposition comes or when trials come and hard times come, that we try to fix it on our own. We try to have all the power in the world to do what we can to fix the problem, to make it better. And then at the end of the day, when nothing works, we'll say, well, I guess I should pray about it. Do you know that your language will determine the value of prayer in your life? So if that's your language, it tells me, and I've done it before, believe me, in some circumstances that I was just being really tested, I would say things, well, I guess I should be praying about it. In other words, hello, pray first. Every time, pray first. We need to pray first. We need to go to God. You know what is so amazing about the God we serve? Is that you don't have to come to me. You don't have to go to your friends. You don't have to go to anybody else. You have total access to God in prayer. Total access. The Bible says that Daniel went to his house, went to his room, and opened up the window, and he prayed 3 times a day. Can you imagine if we prayed 3 times a day? Some of you may, I don't know. I can tell you right now, I need prayer 3 times a day. I'll start my morning off with prayer. Things will be going good. Noon rolls around. I'll be like, man, this day is cruddy. You know what I need to do? Pray. That's what Daniel did. He needed it so much because of all the opposition that he had to go to God constantly to ask for strength for standing up in these moments. Can you imagine what our lives would be like, the thought and the attitudes of who we are if we just prayed? It says in verse 10, now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows were, open towards Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God just as he had done before. He didn't change anything. He went back to his room, opened the window that faced Jerusalem, and he prayed 3 times a day. But he did it in a certain way. He got down on his knees. The posture of our prayer is important. Because when you get down on your knees before God, you are humbling yourself, saying that I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough to make this happen, God. I need you, and you're the only one with the power to give me the strength, to give me the healing or the miracle that I need. And so it's a posture of getting on our knees before our God. Humility at the lowest place. I've even heard of people saying, it's not low enough for me. I actually get my face to the carpet. That I literally lay prostrate on the floor with my nose in the carpet, humbling myself before the Almighty God. And when you do that, let me tell you something, it's a very humbling experience. And the reason why we struggle with getting on our knees is because of pride. That's the opposite of humility, is pride. And it's amazing what God will do. On Tuesdays, we have our staff meetings. And we always have prayer time after our staff meetings. But it was bothering me because we would get finished with a staff meeting and we'd have so much to do and so much to say that I'd say, okay, we're going in for prayer. And we would start to come in here, but my mind would race on the next thing I got to do, the next meeting I'm in. Everybody else is thinking about how they got to go to work and how they got to do this and what they got going on in their mind. And it was like we were in here for 10 minutes and then we'd all leave. And I'm like, man, this isn't the way it's supposed to be. And I said, we're changing it. So now our meeting starts at 9 o'clock, and I say we're coming in at 8:30 to 9, and we're going to spend the first part of our day praying, getting alone with God. And you know what it's done in the last few weeks that we've started this? It's cleared our minds in our meetings. It's the way our attitudes are in our meetings. God starts to open up our minds to new things. We're refreshed. We're ready. We're joyful. God, I mean, it's so cool what God is doing. And I sat about right here where this man's sitting. And I'm sitting here one morning praying, and I could feel like God was saying, you need to get on your knees. And I was fighting him. I'm like, I ain't doing that. People are watching me. There was only like 6 people in the room. And I'm like, I don't want to. And I kept hearing him. I mean, I felt like it wasn't an audible voice, but it was like, you need to get before me and humble yourself. I'm in control of what's going on. And man, I did. I got right here to this altar and I just started praying. And what's the thing we want to think about? What's everybody thinking? Because of pride. We're afraid of what people's going to think. But let me tell you something. It's powerful to get on our knees before God. Wherever that is, in your bedroom, in your prayer closet, I don't care what it is. Notice that Daniel, when the decree was made, Daniel didn't go in front of everybody and say, all right, I'm still going to pray. Listen to me of how I pray so eloquently in front of my Lord God. Do you know spiritual people that do that? They'll pray in front of someone for them to be noticed of how well they can pray. That's definitely not a humble approach. That's a prideful approach. What I like is when people just pray. And here's what happens. When people get in front of people and they got to pray this real eloquent prayer to make themselves look good and all spiritual, what it does is it literally takes people that struggle in prayer and don't want to pray because the prayer was so eloquent. They're like, I can't ever do that, so I'm not ever going to pray. And let me tell you, here's how you pray. You talk to God however you talk. However your language is in every day is how you talk to God. That's simple. The best prayers that I have ever heard are from right here. The simple, heartfelt, you just know whatever is coming out of their mouth is from their heart. The Bible says out of the mouth the heart speaks, and it's so genuine and it's not eloquent. It's just real and raw. Those are the best. And I would rather have somebody pray like that. Now, here's the other side of this though. I have heard people pray that are very humble about it. And because they have such an amazing prayer life, that when they pray, I look at them and say, man, I want to pray like that. They're not doing it to be recognized. They're doing it because they have such a good prayer life that when you hear them pray, it just is like, wow, man, I want that. And then I start to get jealous because I don't have what they have. It's like, okay, Lord, I'm not getting jealous. I just want that. And he says, then get on your knees. Start talking to me every day. Man, I tell you what, that stuff will mess you up. I'm telling you, when you're in opposition, when you're ready to, the only way we can stand strong is being on our knees before God. He is the one that supernaturally gives us the strength in the moments that we need him. God will give you the strength to stand. The strength to stand with a big world issue, an issue that you're struggling at work. You know, I know for a fact there are organizations out there that will try to coerce you into voting a certain way. And maybe you're afraid to let people know what your stance is. Maybe this is a time that you pray about it and you stand strong and say, I'm going to vote the way my heart tells me to vote. Whatever that is for you. Maybe it's in the fact that your boss wants you to work on Sunday and you say, man, that's God's day for me. I can't do that. And you have to stand. Thankfully today, with churches, they have Monday night service, like Roots. So if you have to work on a Sunday, guess what you can do? You can come on Monday night. So it may not be as a big of an issue for you. Maybe you have a sporting event, club, team, whatever it is, ballet, I don't care what it is. And maybe they go and do so much that it takes you away from standing the way you believe, that you go to church and make God your first priority. And then you have to kind of say, no, I'm not going to be a part of that team. It's too much for me. Our values, our standards are like this, and then you don't play for that team. Or maybe it's as simple as they're practicing on Sundays during church. And you say, no, that's not going to work for me. I know my daughter has had a couple practices on Sundays, and I had to email the coach and say she will not be there. Number one, that's the day we serve God, and number two, that's family day. They actually had practice on a Mother's Day one year. Can I just tell you, there ain't no sport important to be practicing on Mother's Day. Have you tried to test your mama? But it's not just that. It's literally the fact that is a holiday that we recognize to be with our families. And that's fine if somebody else wants to do it, but we're not. And I respectfully said, hey, that's our day, so she won't be there. Sometimes you just got to take a stand. Maybe it's a stand to not allow your kids to do certain things. Maybe it's a stand in your relationship when you're a single. I don't know what it is for you, but I can promise that when you take a stand, I can promise you this. God will work it out in the end, but what I cannot promise you is that when you take a stand for something like I just said, maybe you tell your boss I'm not working on Sundays and your boss says you're fired. What I can't tell you is that there won't be a consequence for the stand that you take. That whatever organization you're a part of and you start to take a stand in it, that they reject you. Or maybe it's in a friendship, they're no longer friends with you. I don't know. I cannot tell you for sure that there won't be a consequence and there won't be pain that comes along with the stand. Do you think Daniel knew that we'd be talking about him all these years later, that he would be in all the storybooks, that he'd have this famous story of him in the lion's den? Do you think he went, okay, God, I want people to talk about me? No, he just made the decision, and because of his decision and what happened, God worked it out. Because here's what I can tell you, that even though you take a stand, I can't tell you what the consequence is going to be or that outcome, but what I can do is number 3, when you do what's right, you can always trust God with the results. God has been faithful to Daniel for 80 years. So he had enough faith to believe that he could trust God in that moment, that I'm not going to not pray to my God. You're not going to tell me. He didn't buck, he just did it. He didn't go to them and buck the set. He just did it. And they caught him because they wanted to catch him. And because of that, they threw him in the lion's den. Now, I don't know what Daniel did when he got in there. He could have been like, oh my Lord God, what am I going to do? Stay away from me? Or he may just walked in there and said, come on with it. Nobody really knows what happened down there in the lion's den, but here's what we do know, is he didn't get eaten. And when the king found out that he didn't get eaten, you know what he did? He rejoiced. He was so excited. The king was devastated when he found out that these two administrators were so jealous that they tricked the king in making this decree. But he couldn't go back on his word. He had to follow through, so he had to throw Daniel in there when he got caught. But then when he found out that Daniel prayed and that God saved him, here's what it says in verse 22. My God sent his angel and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight. Nor have I ever done any wrong before you, your majesty. The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him because he had trusted in his God. That when you stand and you do what is right in the eyes of God, you can trust the results are going to be godly results. It doesn't mean there won't be a consequence with your choice. But if you do lose your job or you lose some friends, I think God will bring you some new friends. I think God will give you a better job if we trust him. Daniel didn't waver in his faith. And I can tell you, man, with Christianity, there's too many people wavering. Oh, I can't do that because of this. Oh, I can't do that because I might this. Listen, one thing I've learned is we got to stand in our faith and the results of God will ring through. When you do what is right, you can always trust God with the results. And because King Darius was so upset with these two administrators, you know what he did? He threw them in the lion's den. And because the angel was so tired the night before, the lion devoured the other two administrators. That's a joke. I was just seeing if you were awake. But he really did devour them. I'm just teasing about the angel being too tired is what I was saying. It's amazing. It's amazing. You had two guys that were jealous. They tricked the king to come up with a decree. Daniel didn't waver in his faith. He stood strong. He got in trouble. Threw him in the lion's den. And because of his faith and his trust in God, God spared his life and the lions did nothing. The king rejoiced, pulled Daniel out and threw the other two in the pit and they died. Put that in perspective in your own life of what you're dealing with. That's how God works. This is the kind of faith that we need. Next week I'm going to be talking about standing in faith. This is Daniel standing strong in what he believed. He had the faith to believe it, but he stood strong. He didn't give up. He didn't quit. And so in that, guess what the king did? He made a decree that everyone was to serve the God of Daniel. I love how this works out. Daniel went through some pain. Daniel went through some heartache. But you know what? He was so exceptional in his walk with who he believed in that God spared him. So when God raises you up, people try to tear you down. Kneeling in prayer is what helps us stand strong. And when you do what's right, you can trust God with the results. I want to encourage you today. No matter what comes your way, no matter what challenges, trials, adversities, when you stand strong in your faith with God, He will work it out. In the end, I don't know what it's going to look like through it, but I just know He will work it out in the end. I was thinking about a personal story. The only one I could really kind of tie into right now is the fact that when somebody did something wrong to me, the way they treated me, the way they portrayed my wife and I at our old church and in leadership, the very thing I wanted to do was let everybody know about what really happened. And I had pastor friends saying, stand strong. God will work this out. You take the high road. You do what is right. Man, that was hard. But here I am, 7 years later, pastoring a church that said I would never pastor. They're not pastoring a church. God works it out somehow, some way. It doesn't mean that I didn't go through a year of heartache, because I did. You got to apply that in your own life personally, whatever that looks like for you. I don't know what's going on in your life, but I can tell you this, that when we just stand strong and know that the God we serve will not fail us. He will not fail you. He does not change. He's the same. He loves us. He wants you to prosper. The enemy doesn't want any of that. So he will bring opposition in your life, but if we stand strong, our God will pull through for us, and we can trust his results. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for the story of Daniel. God, thank you that he is a perfect example of character and integrity. He's the perfect example of standing strong in his walk with you, of who you are. He did not waver when it came to prayer. God, he still got on his knees before you. And I just pray today that all of us sitting in this room and the ones watching online today, that God, they will humble themselves before you and kneel before you in prayer, trusting you in what they need to stand strong in. God, that they will pre-decide now what that looks like. And God, we don't know what the consequence may be, but we know that what the results will be in the end. We trust you in this. We thank you for it, and we give you praise. In Jesus' name, church said.
Thank you for joining us online for today's message. If God is impacting your life through this ministry, then join us in reaching others by partnering with us today. You can give at myrootschurch.com/giving, or if you're watching from the Roots app, you can give by clicking the Giving tab below. Be sure to join us next week at 10 a.m. or 6 p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook, the Roots app, or you can also watch us live at myrootschurch.com. See you next time.